Where the Wild Things Are, an audio drama. Originally written by Morris Sendek, rewritten by Ricardo Ruiz, and dubbed by Ricardo Ruiz. During days and especially nights, a little boy named Max would often play pretend by his lonesome, wearing his wolf suit and making mischief of one kind, and another, and another. His mother was getting tired of his childish behavior. Max saw himself as a wild thing, a king of wild things. His mother only saw him as relentless and silly. His mother called to him and said, "Wild thing, clean up your mess." Max, being caught up in his fantasies, said, "Roar, I'll eat you up." So his mother sent him to bed without eating anything. "It is past your bedtime. Now, go to sleep, wild thing," said Max's mother as she closed the door, leaving Max in his room, with nothing but the moonlight as his nightlight. The room was dark, very dark. Max was not fond of the dark. That very night in Max's room a forest grew, and grew, and grew some more. His timidness turned into curiosity. Before he could distinguish whether this was his imagination or real life, vines began to hang from his ceiling. Walls turned into hedges, and the world around him transformed from a small, dimly lit apartment to a new world, where the wild things lived. Walking some distance away from his used-to-be room, he witnessed an ocean tumbling by, with a boat that, coincidentally enough, had his name on it. Max, not saying anything, boarded the boat. "Anything to sail away from here," he said to himself. Max began to set out sailing, days becoming weeks, weeks becoming months, months weaving into a year. At least, that's what it felt like to Max. After some time passing, he found land, a new world, where the wild things are. And then Max arrived at this new land where the wild things lived, and these wild things roared their terrifying roars, gnashed their terrifying teeth, rolled their terrifying eyes, and tapped the trees with their terrifying claws. Max was not alarmed by these creatures. He said to himself, "Hey, at least it's not the dark." To him, these wild things were new friends for Max to play with. Max saw these wild things and said, "Be still." Max began to stare at their yellow eyes, frightening them. No claws being tapped, no teeth being gnashed, no eyes rolled, and most importantly, no roars being roared. Pure silence. The wild things saw this as a force of magic and were terrified of him, dubbing him as the most wild thing of all. After talking amongst themselves, the wild things made the decision to make Max, him, the king of wild things. To Max, he felt belonged for the first time in years. To the wild things, they have found the best of them. "And now," shouted Max, "let the wild rumpus start." Max began to let out and let go with these wild things for many nights and many days. After some time passing, though, Max grew tired of this wild rumpus and fled to greater things. He sensed greater foods to eat and places to go. Foods that he hadn't eaten in what felt like a millennium. He had to give up being king of wild things. The wild things heard this and could not go on without their glorious king. "Oh, glorious king, please don't go. We'll eat you up, we'll love you so." And Max said, "Oh, wild things, sadly no. I must take my leave, and it is time for me to go." And Max had sailed away and fled from where the wild things lived. As they roared their terrifying roars and gnashed their terrifying teeth, rolled their terrifying eyes and tapped the trees with their terrifying claws, Max felt more alive than ever before as he waved goodbye. And as a year became a month, which transitioned to a week and woven into a day, Max returned to his dimly lit room, with his supper waiting for him. And it was still hot.